All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wayfind Marketing Live. I am Steve Phipps. This is my co-host, Annie Laurie. And the whole reason for this weekly marketing live stream is we want to help make marketing easier for small businesses and nonprofits. We know that marketing is complicated. It can feel overwhelming. And so if you're leading a business or some other sort of organization, marketing is essential, but it's not always what you want to do. And so we want to make that easier. And so today's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're excited because we have a whole list of questions, some that have been submitted to us over the past week, some that are common questions that were asked just as we're working with clients on a daily basis that we are really excited to share some answers to. But before we get started, Steve, I was going to ask you about that hat you're wearing. I think you're about to go on a big mountain expedition. You've been training. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Liz and I have been training for a backpacking trip through an outdoor leadership program. It's a ministry called Rev Wild. And, that really a lot of the training has actually become sort of the inspiration for what we're going to do today. Because as we've been training, we've had a lot of questions. We're going to be backpacking. We're going to have, 40 pounds in our packs. So there's been a lot of training, not only physically, but also getting gear and just a lot of training for what we're going to do on the trail. And, as I was telling you, that whole experience is really what I think it's like for a lot of business owners, for a lot of nonprofit leaders when it comes to marketing. There's a lot to learn. There are lots of different moving pieces. And, last year we did a survey of small business owners. And what we found is the majority don't have any sort of a plan. Over 80% said that they consider marketing to be essential for their business. And I think for where we are now, that number would be higher. Marketing is essential to survival in some cases, but that they would, even more, almost 90% said, I'd rather be doing something else in my business. However, marketing was still their responsibility. So it's sort of this push-pull of I need to do it. I know it's important, but I don't always have the time to figure it out. And I'd rather be focused on my customers. I would rather be doing other things in the business. So today we're doing marketing Q&A. We've, as Annie Laurie already said, we've collected questions from a variety of different people and sources. And so we're going to dive in. And depending on where you're joining us, if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you happen to be following along, please feel free to ask questions. You can drop a question in the comments. We will get to those questions. We want to make sure that we answer questions that you might have right now. So we've got a list of different questions. Annie Laurie, why don't you kick it off?
We have questions from every category you can think of, from strategy to blogging to content planning to drivers and engagers, sales, funnel questions, you name it, we've got the gamut. So I think what we'll start with today is just to go through all the categories and try to hit a question from each one. And I think the plan is that we'll come back next week and finish up whatever questions we can't get to today. So, All right, rapid fire, here we go. It's strategy. Okay. We're going to start with strategy. So I think that this was one of the most asked questions, and that's when you're a small business owner, a lot of times when you're just starting out, or even if you're established, you might have a limited budget, and it may feel like a real stretch to put the money towards marketing that you need to do. So the question is, what is the most profitable thing to invest in from a marketing perspective? They want to get the most bang for their buck. So where should they invest first?
Well, the first thing, so when it comes to marketing, any organization, again, small business, big business, nonprofit, it's going to cost something. Marketing, especially if you're just getting started, there's time, there's effort, there's energy, and in some cases there's financial investment. So obviously there are limitations on all of those resources. And so the first thing I would say to do is put together a plan, because otherwise here's what happens. And I've seen this happen time and time again. It's what we call spaghetti marketing. We also call it hope and wish marketing. And that's, you start with some sort of tactic, however you've learned about marketing, whatever you know, maybe you talk to other peers and friends. They start out and they just kind of do something. Social media, let's use that as an example. Well, everybody's on social media, so they'll start a Facebook page and try to start communicating, but they don't see results. So what I would say is start with a plan. And a resource that we've made available is, if you go back to the last 5 episodes of Wayfind Marketing Live, that's what we talked about, is how to create a marketing plan. So think about who is your audience, what drives them, how are they getting information about what you do, and start putting that plan together. And so it's going to vary. You have some businesses where maybe it makes sense to be really heavy on social media, and that's where you're going to connect with people. For others, it's doing search engine optimization and trying to get found through the search engines. Sometimes it's just picking up the phone and calling people, or connecting with influencers within your network. So there are a lot of different things that can happen there, but the big thing is get a plan. Think about how you're going to get in contact with people. Once you do, what's the process you're moving them through ultimately to become a customer, a supporter, a donor, whatever it is you're trying to get them to do.
Great. Well, the next question that we have is really segues well with that, because a lot of times people want to know, what's the best bang for my buck? Where should I invest my money right away? And then the second is the question of time. And, what small business owner has enough time to do all the things on their plate? None of them. So we got a great question from a local small business owner named Amy, who wants to know, one thing that would really help her is to have some kind of a content calendar, but she feels like she never has the time to get it all done. Everything that she's doing with her content feels sporadic and disorganized rather than planned and strategic. So what would be the best way for her to get that plan in place?
So a lot of times what happens, and so if the idea of a content calendar is new, really all it is just that it's a calendar that you use to schedule out social media, email, blogs, any sort of content that you're creating. And honestly, one of the things that helps is yes, you need a calendar of some sort. And that could be as simple as a Google Calendar. Create a calendar that is specifically for content, and you just make a note. Maybe if it helps you to go in and type the post out that particular day, great. Create a spreadsheet and put numbers for each of the days in the course of a given month. Each tab could be a month. The thing that I think really kind of derails that for people following through and being consistent is again, there's not a plan. So a lot of times what happens is content's created sort of on a day-by-day basis. It's that idea of, I need to do something on Facebook today, but I'm in the middle of everything else. And if I get to it, great. But if I don't, well, it doesn't get done. So what I suggest is, whether you use a calendar, whether you use a spreadsheet, really it's just your personal preference. There are paid tools out there. There's a program called CoSchedule, which is a marketing content management platform that's really good. It's probably $90 a month. But again, if you want spreadsheet, Google Calendar, get a written calendar, print it out, write it down, however works best for you. Plan it out. Give yourself an hour each month where you're planning for the next month. Think through, what kind of content do you need to create? Are you sharing somebody else's? Look for consistency. Like on social media, we have clients where we'll create a series, and every Monday, so we have a client that does a leadership huddle, and basically every Monday we're posting some sort of a leadership quote. And so we know every Monday is going to be something along those lines. We have another client that every Friday they recognize a nonprofit in their community. And so by identifying some themes, it lets you be consistent, but sit back, plan it out, and then batch your content. So give yourself an hour, 2 hours, however long you need, and do it. Sit down and block it off and do it. It's going to be more productive than if you just wait and do it each day. Maybe you do it weekly, again, whatever fits your schedule. But so part of it is the tool, but then part of it is just making sure that you're blocking time off to plan.
Yeah, that's great advice. And also, I would mention that if you are looking for templates, HubSpot's another great source for some
Yes.
good templates for content planning. And also, they have the Buffer and Hootsuite services like that that will even give you free access with a limited number of posts where you just schedule in advance. And to Steve's point, you take that hour, you batch it out for the month, schedule it in Buffer, and you're done. And so it's really just carving out the time and the discipline to take that 1 hour, hour and a half, and you can get your month done. But it's the discipline of taking that 1 hour, hour and a half to do it, I think.
And that goes back to what I said a little while ago to the first question is marketing is going to cost. It's going to cost something. And actually it's an investment. Now, if you look at it as just a cost, then you're not expecting an ROI. So it is going to require time. It's going to require energy. It's going to require, again, in some cases, it will require finances. But so sometimes it just comes down to block off the time, make it a priority, turn the phone off, turn the laptop off, all the distractions, and focus on creating that content.
Great. Well, and segueing from content, we had a lot of questions actually about search engine optimization. And I don't think we'll be able to cover all the questions, but out of all the categories, there were the most questions about SEO. So we'll definitely be following up in future with more SEO advice and content. But at a high level, can you just unpack what it is? People want to know, what is SEO and why does that matter to me as a small business owner? How does it impact my marketing? They just want to know what's the most important thing about this that they need to know right now.
Okay. Search engine optimization, just as a quick overview, it's the process of getting a website to show up in the search results. So Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. when somebody searches for something that's related to what you do. And everybody wants to be on page one of Google. There's a joke in the marketing world that says, where's the best place to hide a dead body? On page 2 of Google. And so, but getting there is not easy. And especially if you're in a competitive industry.
Right.
So the way to get a website to rank high is you've got to have good content on your website. It needs to be structured correctly. So part of it is the actual way the website is built, how things are linked. Your online presence, is everything consistent? So little things that you can do, make sure that all of the directories that you have where your business is listed, everything's consistent, your name, your address, and your phone. Make sure that it's all spelled the same. You can use, there are different tools that will do that for you. Some local SEO management tools. There's one called Moz Local, M-O-Z Local. It's about $100 a year. You input all your information and it pushes it out to a bunch of different online directories. So that's something. Make sure your Google business listing is optimized. Claim it, update it. Google puts a lot of weight on that. Another thing that's a big factor is inbound links. And so that's links from other trustworthy, reputable websites that link to your site. Google, Bing, they will look at that as a vote of confidence if they know, and Google will give a score. Nobody really knows exactly how they do it, but they score websites in terms of credibility from 0 to basically 100. And so the higher your score, the more trustworthy. Look at one of the things to look at is what's called domain authority. There's different tools out there, so you could look at a tool. There's a tool called SpyFu that you can use for free. Do a quick assessment. They'll give you some information about how you're ranking, how your competitors are ranking. So, SEO is one of those things that's worth investing some money in to get somebody to do it for you. And you can find firms that will do local SEO for a few $100 a month, depending on how aggressive it can go up to thousands of dollars a month. But the reality is it takes time. Google doesn't change things overnight. Just because you post a blog post, which can be part of an SEO strategy, doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to show up on page 1. Google doesn't want to show junk. And your website might be fantastic. It might be the best content out there, but they need time, credibility, all of these factors. So it's a long-term investment. If you do 3 months of SEO and you're frustrated that you're not seeing results, well, don't give up. It's more like, a good bottle of wine takes years to mature. And I'm not a wine guy, so I might be saying the wrong word, but I don't know if
You're right.
but it takes time, that's a very broad question, but that's hopefully a somewhat brief answer.
Yeah.
And if you talk to somebody about SEO, ask them who they've worked with. Do they do local? Again, there's different ways to approach and different strategies.
Well, I know we're only going to hit one question, but this came up so much. I think it's worth noting. Some people were wanting to know, does SEO apply to social media, or is this just to your website and the content that's on your website?
It's, and again, somebody that, an SEO specialist who lives and breathes SEO, and that's all they do, could give a much more detailed answer. Here's big picture. Google looks at everything. The search engines look at everything. They look at your overall social presence. They look at where you're listed on different websites, et cetera. So does social media play a factor? Yes. How much of a factor? That's always debatable. Google is changing their algorithm daily. Periodically, they do big, significant updates that shift a lot of websites. But that's another reason to be active. Show that you're relevant. Again, Google, if you have a Facebook page and you haven't posted to it in 3 years, and that's not helping your customers see you as being a good resource, because you've got a Facebook page, but your last post was 3 years ago.
Right. Yeah, agreed. And just to reiterate your point, the number one thing we would advise you invest in is plans, strategy. Get that plan in place first. But I would probably say the number 2 thing would be SEO. If that's something that you're interested in, definitely be willing to invest a little bit of cash there.
And let me make a distinction as well. Sometimes in the course of where somebody is, depending on how competitive the space is, it might be wiser to invest in other ways to get in front of people, because there are some spaces where it is highly, highly competitive, and the chances of your site ranking on page 1 are slim to none. And so there are other ways to do SEO in those scenarios. But again, maybe it makes sense to look at some other strategies to get in front of your audience.
Yeah. Such as maybe PPC, pay-per-click, or other drivers. Could you maybe just list out a few other drivers that might be more effective if SEO, that long game of SEO, really isn't what somebody's looking for?
Yeah. Or it could be that, if somebody's doing SEO, that's going to be a long-term play, but you're looking for more immediate responses. Pay-per-click advertising are the ads that you see on Google, Bing, when you search for a term or a phrase and an ad shows up at the top or the bottom. And you pay per click, hence the name. And so that can be a way to reach people. It can be a profitable way. Needs to be done in terms of measuring how many customers it generates or how many leads it generates. It's not just about getting clicks. You need clicks that actually convert, people that become a lead, that become a customer. And again, it's in context, because there are some industries where that becomes a really good way to drive traffic, especially while SEO is building up. But again, it comes down to sometimes seasonality can drive the cost. Right now, PPC for HVAC companies is going to be really high. The cost per click could be, I've seen in the past, $25, $30 per click, because so many people are trying to show up for a limited number of those ad spots. Whereas, there's others where it's $2 a click, and that can drive some good traffic. But yeah, it's another way could be using Facebook advertising.
Yes.
That could be a way to get in front of an audience that you're targeting, to get them to take the next step. Different strategy, different approach, because you're in Facebook ads, you're reaching an audience that doesn't necessarily know you.
Right.
They're not looking for your product, so it's more of an interruption. But again, with a good strategy, that can be effective.
Great, thanks. This next question we have is kind of shifting to a different area of marketing and sales. And it's a question from one of our friends who does B2B business. And they're looking to understand, how can I find the right person? How do I find the decision maker in the organization when I am a business selling a service to another business, but at one business, the title might sound different than the title of the person at the next business. Is there any advice you have for somebody who's just trying to figure out, how do I get to the decision maker?
Yeah, the easiest scenario is when when the job title of the person who needs your product or service stays consistent from one company to the next. However, that's not always the case. And so one client that I worked with years ago, they sold into a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and that was the same challenge they faced. The person who's responsible for the service that they were selling would change. It might be somebody in the C-suite, or it might be a director in a different department. And so, because it touched different parts of the business. So I will say there are tools out there that show what's called search intent. And so there's an organization, Discover.org, that provides lists, the call lists, but that also they have a paid service that they've been able to identify people from certain companies who have been searching for a particular type of service, so they can provide that type of information.
Oh yeah, that's very useful.
However, for a lot of companies, smaller B2B companies, that might not be an option. So part of it is creating personas. Who is the person, or what is a description of their responsibilities? Looking for those threads based on your experience. What are the consistencies that you see? And then at that point, that could be an outbound approach, using LinkedIn to prospect, to sort of blanket people who, based on roles or responsibilities, can, you try to reach the right people. So it's a little bit always a game of, how can I do this with the least amount of time? And again, maybe there is search intent. Maybe there are people who are proactively searching for what you do. And so potentially using some SEO or pay-per-click, you have some sort of a lead generation offer that would invite them to take the next step, download something, so you can capture them that way as well.
Well, I know we're coming close to the end of our show, but I want to take that lead offer and let that lead us to our last question. And that is about email marketing. And people want to know how to build that email list. What are some strategies and best practices to get more email addresses in the email?
So one of the things to remember about email is that people are pretty protective of that. Every year there's somebody who's well, email's dead, or it's not. No, it's not. Email's around. It's not going anywhere. But people are protective, and our inboxes continue to get bombarded by marketing and sales emails on a regular basis. Some that we've signed up for, some that we haven't. So one is, have something that's compelling enough that somebody is willing to give you their email address. Now, if you just have something on your website that just says, hey, the only thing that's there is, hey, sign up for our newsletter, there's no information, there's no description, there's no value being communicated as to why, you're not going to get any emails. Maybe your aunt, maybe a cousin, but other than that, nobody's going to sign up for that. So creating a lead offer, something that somebody can download, an infographic, a resource, a webinar, a discount, something that would be valuable enough that somebody will say, yes, I will give you my email address. And so you capture that email. Now you have permission to market to them. Your existing customers, think about how you could reach out to them through email. But again, it comes down to content. If it's all you're doing is a sales push, then that's going to tune people out, unless you're clear on the front end. So, hey, we're going to send you sales emails. Be worded differently, and people sign up for it, then fantastic. They know what they're in for. But if you want to share content, something that's helpful, useful, informative in the context of what you do. And so that's, again, there's a lot more that could be said in terms of how to do it, the tactics you use to pop up on your website, the tools to do that with, the programs, but just have good content. And give people a reason to opt in through your website. When you have conversations with people, I'll do this when I'm talking to somebody. I'll mention to them, hey, I have a weekly email, marketing tip email that I send out. Would it be okay if I add you to that list? And typically, and I always let folks know, of course, if at some point it's not what you want, just opt out.
And some effective email, like technology, Mailchimp, Constant Contact.
Yeah.
Favorite?
There are a bunch of different tools. Mailchimp is a good option. We use ActiveCampaign. If you're going a little bit more robust, then a tool like HubSpot, it's more expensive, but there's a lot more that you can do with it as well. And so Keep, K-E-A-P, it used to be Infusionsoft, is a pretty good platform as well.
Great. That's awesome. If anybody listening or watching has a question, we want to remind you that you can pop on with a live question at any time. We are going to be back next week answering more of your questions here on the show. We're going to have the podcast up within the next day or so, and we'll have some show notes with more links that we've been referencing in today's live stream. What else, Steve? What else?
I want to give kind of a bonus question here. Because one of the things, of course, with marketing is we expect an ROI. We expect to get results from our activity. And the thing that I want to remind folks of, marketing is part art, but it's part art, it's part science. Lots of things can be measured, but ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to influence human behavior. And as you probably noticed, that's very subjective. And marketing is good. Marketing it's more, I'm going to use a sports analogy here. So it's more like a good batting average than it is a good free throw percentage. And so here's what I mean by that. In basketball, a good free throw percentage, 90% plus is really good. Whereas in baseball, a really good batting average. So in that case, you figure they're hitting 9 out of 10 every free throws. Well, in baseball, if somebody's batting 300, that means they're getting on base 3 out of every 10 times. So that means 7 out of 10 times they're not. So marketing is more like batting average. It means trying different things out, trying different headlines and subject lines, and sometimes different tactics, different promotions. And so the thing that you think is just going to be fantastic and you put all your effort and energy into it, sometimes it fizzles. And the thing that you really thought, well, I'll give it a shot, that turns out to be the thing that works really well. So again, there's a lot that you can do to make sure you're eliminating the things that are going to fail. But then there's testing, there's evaluating. We use things like A/B testing, where we evaluate the image of a homepage. We did that on the Wayfind website here recently. We tested 4 different homepage images to see which would impact how long people stayed on the website. And honestly, again, it was one of those ones. Here's the picture that I think is going to do it, and it ended up being a picture that somebody else on the team had found. And so, test, measure, adjust. But marketing you got to be in marketing for the long haul. Sometimes you can have some quick wins from some campaigns, but you got to commit for the long haul.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for letting us rapid fire through some questions today. Is there anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye for today?
No, that's it. I would say if you've got questions that you want to submit for next Friday, so next Friday at noon, drop me an email, steve@wayfindmarketing.com, and we will make sure to cover those questions next Friday. And if for some reason we can't get to it, then we will cover those in upcoming our weekly marketing tip video, which typically drops on Tuesdays. Okay. So
yeah. And if you want to get added to that list, you can also email Steve at wayfindmarketing.com to get added.
Or just sign up on the website.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Lots of ways to get connected. Well, thank you so much. And if that's all we have for today, I guess it's time to say goodbye.
That's it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.